Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Flux of fluxwithit.com, and today I'm going to talk about creating a multi-patch in the Hydrasynth Deluxe. So I do work for ASM, and I've been on the Hydrasynth Deluxe for quite a long time now, but this video is just for my channel, and I'm going to do it how I want to do it, so you can join me along on this. What I want to do here is I'm going to show how to make a layered patch where I'm going to have a percussive top end and I'm going to have like a soft analogish style pad on the low end, so you kind of can blend two different worlds together to create something special and unique. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to press my lower button and then I'm going to turn the balance knob all the way to the left. What that's going to let me do is the panel will light up blue, and that's just letting me know that I'm in the lower section here. And I'm going to start editing just that patch by having the balance all the way to the left. That means that I'm only hearing the lower patch. And you hear it's just an initialized sound, which again, you can get to initialize sound by double tapping the init button. Now what I want to do here is, because again, this lower sound is going to be basically like an analog style traditional pad synth sound. So I'm just going to do some basic things here. Stereo width is going to come up to about 50, analog feel to about 28, warm mode on, and we should be good to go there. So now I've got this normal sound here. Here's where we're going to get into some fun stuff with this. The first thing that I want to do is I want to take my oscillators, and though I have these really nice high resolution waveforms in here, I want to make them a little bit less perfect. And the way that I'm going to do that to make it kind of simulate an analog synth in a way is I'm going to use the wave scan. The wave scan is going to let me blend between waveforms. So what I'll do here is, and actually it's an interpolation I should say. So I'm going to hold shift and I'll actually start with the sine wave here. When I get to the saw wave down here, I'm going to change that one to the pulse, and then up here I'm going to go into the horizons. Now what we'll do is I'm going to use a macro knob to control that wave scan, and the reason I'm doing that is because the wave list here, you'll see you have 8 slots, okay? If you use just the wave scan parameter in the display here, it's rather coarse. You only get up to an 8.0 here, so it looks like you would only have, 9 digits in between there. But in fact, it's 24-bit interpolation between each one of those steps. So there's actually thousands of waves in between each. So if you set a macro to only be a small amount, you can actually have the full throw of the knob to get all those fine in-between waves there, and that's what I'm going to do. So we'll hit macro assign 1, assign to the oscillator 1, and then that's going to go to wave scan, and then I'm only going to take that to like maybe 28, okay? And then I'll name it really quickly here. So I like to just use the list name. I'm going to use wave scan, and we'll go ahead and make it wave scan. I'm going to kind of shorten this down a little bit and make this wave scan 1, okay, in case I decide to add more later, which I probably will. Now I have that oscillator set up here, and I can easily so you'll notice how smooth that morph is between those waveforms. Now if I had the macro set to the full range here, if I bring that up to 128, it's still smooth, but it's a much more coarse knob turn. Let me and I don't need all of that for what I'm trying to get here. So I'm going to do macro assign, and I'll edit that back down to, like I said, it was about 28. I kind of liked it where it was. So yeah, that should be good. Doesn't have to be specific. And then fact, we'll do, let me see that waveform again. Let me see what I have here. Triangle, triangle sol. I'm actually going to change this to a square wave. Yeah. And I'm doing that for a reason. I'll show you here. So macro assign, bring that up just a little bit more. Now let's see where we're at. There we are. And macro. That's good. I don't want it to be perfect, but I want to have that flexibility. Now, of course, I could take it to like 64, and if I go to 64, it'll go to a perfect square wave there, I believe. I believe it was wave 4 that I had. Hold shift to get fine resolution here. So I got to back it off a bit. And I can double check that by, yeah, okay. I'll just back it off here. Anyway, good to go. So the point being is that what I'm doing here is I'm going to just tweak my waveform a tiny bit. Just that little bit, just like that. That little bend in the waveform is going to allow me to kind of get that kind of imperfect sound. Now, if I hold save and I press oscillator 1, and while still holding save, press oscillator 2, you'll see that it was flashing. I've now copied that waveform over to the second oscillator. All right, so I can bring this one up. I'm going to drop oscillator 1 down a bit just to give me some more headroom here. I like to have a lot of headroom to work with in the beginning. And I'm going to detune these a little bit more. And this wave, this one here will do. I'm gonna leave oscillator 2 a little bit more stagnant, but I'm gonna have it a bit more rounded of a waveform. So now we have, you know, just these kind of slightly different waveforms, and you got a little bit of detune in there, plus you got the analog feel, so up the keyboard it's going to sound a little bit different. Now let's get our filters adjusted here. We'll go ahead and do something like, we'll do the MS-20 style, and we'll bring it nice and low. Envelope up, and we'll take the envelope, drop that down here, give it some decay, a little bit of sustain, a little bit of attack here too, and some release. And let's get some release on our amp. So now we're already in that range of getting these pretty nice sounds. I like to use the filter drive here. Now the drive on the Hydrasynth is, you know, really flexible here. I'll bring it up about halfway. And when you do that, you do want to be careful about your amp. A lot of times you're going to want to compensate for how much boost you're giving it with the drive. But because I also dropped the mixer back a little bit, I still have some headroom there. And you can play with the pre and post. So the post is more like a VCA overdrive, whereas the pre is a filter overdrive. So I'm really enjoying how that's sounding so far. Now, of course, the great thing about Hydrasynth is polyphonic aftertouch. this becomes extremely useful for patches like this. So we'll go into our mod matrix. This is going to be our first slot. I like to hit LFO5 to be a quick jump to get to the polyphonic aftertouch. Now that's going to go to my filter, and I'm going to increase that just a bit. So now you've got that movement there. In addition to that, what I'll do is I'll use some polyphonic aftertouch to increase the filter drive even further. And when I do that, I'm also going to use polyphonic aftertouch to take the amp level down just a little bit. So the amp is actually going to come down just a hair. Kind of keeps everything controlled. Very nice. Okay. So we now have this basic patch down low, and it's pretty nice. I'm not going to go too crazy with this patch just yet, because again we have that upper layer. Now I've turned the knob to the right and I've pressed the upper button. My panel has changed color to yellow. If I like, I can go ahead and press the system setup, and I can change those colors to whatever I like. Now what's important about that is that means I can turn my color to green, and it makes me so happy. So now I have a green panel on here, as every Flux With It video should have. And this sound I want to be completely different from that lower sound, okay? So we're going to start with our envelopes here. Actually, you know what? Before we get to the envelope, let's go ahead and just completely change how this oscillator sounds. And I'm going to do that by pressing random, and then I'm going to press the waveforms here. And I'm just randomly pulling up waveforms because it's fun to do so, and then I can check them out. Actually kind of digging those, except for the first one. First one I might go, yeah, that's a little bit better. Okay, so now I have and again, I like to set a macro and have that go to my wave scan. For that one, I'm going to use macro 2 actually. Actually, no, you know what? We will do it on 1, and I'll show you why. So macro 1 is going to go here. Wave scan. I'm going to have this one be the full range, and I'll name it wave scan, but I'm going to name it the same as I did the lower layer, right? So it'll be wave scan, and then you remember I edited this to where the A turns to an N, and I believe I had that as a 1. So now, if I go to my multi-layer, I'm in the multi-layer now, you'll see that wave scan 1 is here when both up and down arrows are there. That's because I've named them both the same, so it knows, hey, if you're using both, let that name pass through. So I can do that. It's pretty cool. Now, what we want to do is we want to make this really fun and percussive. So I'm going to use envelope 3. We're going to make this a pretty short envelope. The decay will look like it's long, but it's actually going to be really short because I'm going to make this extremely exponential. Okay. And that's going to go back over to, let's go to that wave scan again. So envelope 3 is going to my wave scan. And actually we'll leave that at 0 and make this a macro. So macro assign mod depth, and this is mod slot 1. And it's going to go to 128. And this will be called byte. So now I can play with that. Okay, so we have that. Now let's take our filter And I'll probably play around a little bit to decide on the filter, but the STN12 is pretty good for this kind of thing. So we'll take this down here, give it a decent amount of resonance. About here. And my lower filter, I'm going to, filter 2, I'm actually going to use this to just kind of round out the top. And though this part might all seem a little bit mundane and boring or whatever, you can really get into some cool stuff with this. So a little bit of FM goes a long way. So here I like to drop the depth down to about 32 or so. And we'll set that to a macro. Dry wet. Call that FM. Look at how easy that is. Okay, now our main envelope. And we're going to bring in our second oscillator on that side. And these ones I'm keeping pretty high because I want it to be kind of hard hitting and not brittle, but aggressive. Aggressive, I guess, is a good word for that. And then this one I'm just going to have it. Perfect. Now, on its own, this sound is not fun, right? But we're going to do some cool stuff with that. We're going to use a reverse delay that's BPM synced. We'll take it to like maybe 1/4 dotted. Okay. Bring that up about halfway. Okay, now when I bring these two together, we'll start to hear some. So we're getting there. And I can balance it a little bit better. And I want to do a little bit more with that upper layer. So I'm going to bring in there we are. Yeah. We're going to drop this down. Delays I pretty much always put to a macro because it's, you know, effects, final effects are just that kind of thing where you want to have quick access to turn on and off. So I pretty much always set them to a macro. Alright, so now this lower guy, we're going to make that just a sine wave. And I like to kind of play with some rhythmic elements here. So I'm going to have envelope 4 is going to go back to the filter cutoff. And I'll leave that low so that I can set a macro to that. Macro mod depth 2. That'll go up. And actually we'll take that to about, we want a little bit better control of that. 75 should be fine. And we'll call this maybe like, let's see. I'm going for B's for some reason. I don't know what that's all about. Let me get away from that. I call it jam bing. There we go. So now this 4 is going to be BPM synced. We'll do it to eighth notes. Yeah. and we can have that looping. And we'll also have it go to our amp. And this one I may tie to the same macro. Yeah, that'll go to that macro as well. So now I get these little like bounces kind of happening in there. It just gives it a little bit more rhythmic play. And of course you can have that fade in and out with another envelope. You can do all sorts of fun stuff there. For the effects here, I think I may do a distortion on it and kind of keep it subtle. Tie the polyphonic aftertouch will get tied to that mod depth 2. So again, that's mod depth 2. Bring that up a bit. Alright, so now we have some nice polyphonic aftertouch playability there where we just add in a little bit of movement. We're bringing in that that string sound, and when I do it on the upper layer, it just brings in more of that. And of course you could set like a macro to increase the speed of that. Let's do that now. It was 4. So we can do different things like take the decay and just bring it back a little bit. So now if I do that, so quite nice, and it stays BPM synced when you do that. So we'll just call that call it like speed or something. I don't know. So I'm digging that. So now I have this. Now I can go into my multi here, and I'm actually going to lower the dB level of the lower multi, the lower patch, by maybe 5. And of course we can play with some reverb here. So we'll do macro, and we'll go to the reverb. That will go to our dry wet. And I'm going to do something a little bit different with this as well. So yes, I'm going to have it on a macro because it's nice to have that easy access. So reverb, okay, so I can of course do that. But what I'm also going to do, and I'm going to set this to about like 3.5 seconds with like maybe 13 seconds, milliseconds of pre-delay. Bring up the low dampening a bit, and high dampening just a tad. Okay, so now I have that, and I can, of course, but that's not super interesting, and it's kind of boring, whatever. What I'm going to do is go into my mod matrix. I'm going to press the ribbon, and I'm going to turn that to relative. That's going to go to reverb time, and I can increase that so that I can do things like, and I still have it on pitch as well. And I can let go, and then it kind of just fades out. That's also really fun for delay times if you want to mangle them. I can do that here really easily, so I'll go to Mod Matrix, again, ribbon, relative, and then I'm going to go to delay, time, and we can make it longer. Or I can make it shorter. But I kind of like it longer because it gives it that, kind of drawn out. Subtle but fun, and maybe we'll even tie the amount of that delay to it as well. Delay. We'll do the dry wet can come up a bit, and then we'll also do ribbon, relative, delay, feedback up a bit. So that's, just a nice fun way to get kind of movement there. And again, going back to the multi, and it's kind of nice to be able to pan things left and right and do that sort of thing. You can just use the stereo width if you like. So now that's going to give me So, really cool, easy way to kind of layer these sounds up. Now, let's take this a step more rhythmic. As I mentioned before, I like to do these parts kind of rhythmic. So, I'm going to play with the arpeggiator on this. And what I can do is... Oh, let me change my system here. I was using with Ableton earlier, so I had my clock synced to my computer. I don't want that right now. And of course, you can make that separate or combined. I'm actually going to do this. And this also gives me an opportunity to kind of play with those envelopes and get them a little bit more dialed in. And I think that deserves its own macro as well, so let's do that. So a nice trick here is that I'll set the macro to full and adjust the envelope amount here to get right to about where I hear it, being at the max effectiveness that I would want, which is right about here. So now we have that, and we can easily. So just really easy to kind of take a nice smooth sound like and layer it with this like kind of more harsh digital pluck. It's really fun to kind of layer those two deeply contrasting sounds against each other. Yeah, so this is Hydrasynth Deluxe, and I'm probably going to be doing a bunch more of these videos, but I wanted to just give a taste of what it's like to create a patch from scratch. Now, again, if I go to that multi-mode real quick, I'll just show you that I can, of course, set my macros to be pretty much whatever I want them to be. We'll set that to both, and then we'll have this upper. Most of what I'm doing here is going to be upper. And then we go like so. So, yeah. And you'll see that now I have all my macros on that level. Quite nice macro assign here. It's going to go to reverb. I didn't do any reverb on that lower, did I? So we can just do that real quick. Change that. All right, and there we have it. So now we have the reverb for both, wave scan for both. Everything else is set to upper layer because that's what I wanted to change. And if I want to morph it, super fun. If you guys have any questions or anything about it, just hit me up. You know how to get a hold of me. Peace.